and welcome to episode number 19 of the Sista-Cousins podcast. Today we are sisters in HR. You guys have heard us talk about what we do on our podcast on several different occasions, and the three original sisters, the Sista-Cousins, we are all in HR related fields. But today we have a special guest. We have our other sister cousin, Mrs. Lynette Barnwell. She's also in HR. And then we have a super special guest, Miss Karla Bell. She represents a federal and private sector employees from international unions. So Danya she's a federal employee in HR. I'm a local governmental employee in the HR related field. Joanna and Lynette are in private sector, and again, Karla is representing an international union, but she represents the federal and private sector employees of an international union. And so we have been asked by a couple of people, they were interested in us doing a podcast in reference to HR. And so we thought, what better moment that we can introduce another one of our sister cousins than to do this. And ironically, Danya, Joanna, and myself, we all graduated with our undergraduate degrees in 2006. We just, realized that again on yesterday. Lynette, when did you graduate with your degree?
The master's was 2012.
2012. And how about your undergrad?
Undergrad was 19 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Long time.
I'm only asking that question because as the sister cousins, we're just trying to figure out, what are the similarities we have. We did not plan all on being in HR related fields. I'm actually an accounting supervisor, which with some HR functions where I process payroll and some benefits or whatever. So this is kind of ironic how we all ended up in the same field as sister cousins. But we have some questions from a young lady. She's actually a friend of my little sister. And so
my first child.
Danya's first child, my little sister, how that's a little weird and ironic, but
We'll talk about that one day. We'll talk about it one day.
That is so funny. So we are just going to jump right on in there with those questions. Lynette, Karla, did you get the questions? Okay, good. So one of the first questions, and any one of you can answer them if you like. The first question is how to get into the field of HR as a new graduate. Anybody want to tackle that?
Yeah, I can start off with that. So I just have to give a little bit of my background. I didn't go directly. In 19 years back, 2001, I absolutely did not go right into HR. So the only advice I can give is to just, if that's where your mindset is to get into human resources, just stay on that path. It took several years to get into HR, like a true HR position. At first, I went in sales. I sold college admissions. I was selling real estate. I just knew I wanted to help people. That's kind of how I got into it. I said, oh yeah, I want to be that advocate for the employee. I just want to work with people. So I never really sat down and said, I wanted to be in human resources. It was just, I know I want to help people. So it took a lot of trials and some time and everything to get to that point of crossing over to human resources. But I think the main takeaway from it is if that's what you want to do, just keep taking positions that give you the skill set that you need to eventually end up in HR.
I would also say when you are working in those positions, you need to be able to take away what is HR related from those positions. So if you're working in sales, then what portion of that customer service aspect is related to human resources? Because then you have to, when you're writing up your resume for a human resource position, you need to be able to pull out specifics from that HR background that you did in that position, say as the cashier at Walmart. You need to be able to look at the position that has been announced and the job description and take away from that, okay, well, I did this, just not in that particular order when I worked in this position, and you need to adjust your resume to reflect that, because that's what the algorithms look for. That's what the HR managers look for when they're reviewing your resume. Your resume stays on the HR manager's desk for less than 7 seconds. So you need to have those words that jump out, that make them feel that, okay, this is a potential candidate. I can put that resume to the side.
Okay. I will say also that once you have, though, your undergraduate degree, whatever that may be in, and if you want to pursue a career in HR, there are always certifications that you can take to help balance out, the HR experience that you don't have. That's a path, that I have or am pursuing or whatever as well. Although I have an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, those certifications are those you're honing in on those particular HR fields, skills. And let me just say that, so we have a human resource director on the episode today. That's Lynette. We have a human resource manager, who is Danya. We also have a human resource generalist, which is Joanna. I'm an accounting supervisor. And so we have, we have a vast array of different HR positions, people that you on this podcast that can kind of help you in those particular areas. Karla, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, so I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I am not in HR. I actually am a union representative, so I work with HR and sometimes against HR, but I don't work in HR. So, but, and I am an advocate for employees. We do we work in conjunction with HR for labor relations and things like that. Try to get things resolved. Be in the union. It's not HR. It's kind of like we work definitely always for our members.
But it's labor management relations. So
it is.
We can technically, it has that point. So Karla actually only got the federal employees, I think it was last year, right? When you started doing
it's been very recent.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when she did that, as someone who's a human resource manager on the federal side, though she's dealing with federal employees from a different agency than mine, she was able to call me and ask me questions, and I was able to provide information to her on the labor management relations and how we do things and what this thing means for, because what is done federally and what's done privately and what's done locally and state, it is totally different. So how she represents her employees on the federal side is not the same way she represents her employees in the private sector.
No, it's a different terminology. Everything is like completely different. It's, rules and things that are afforded on the federal side that don't exist in the private world. It's just two completely, different worlds and everything. But I do enjoy what I do. I've been doing it for a very long time now. I do enjoy, communicating with knowledgeable HR people who actually know what they're doing, and I can actually get things done with them, because working with so many different, employers, hospitals, nursing homes, federal, private hospitals, you went from one end of the spectrum to the other. You think that people in HR should know better, know their actual job, and a lot of times they do not. And it puts us in a position where we have to basically advocate for the members. But it's always, I've dealt with all kinds of people in this line of work, and some people don't know what they're doing.
I'm going to add something to that too. I've worked on both federal and private sector. I've been an HR manager. I've been in training and development. I think I worked every single job there is in HR. But I've also been a career consultant. And one of the things I always tell my clients is that just because you have an HR degree does not guarantee you an HR job. You have to have experience with that also. And as a recruiter, which I have worked as a recruiter also, those are the things that I'm kind of looking at. I want somebody who's not only has the degree, has the certification, but also has real world experience. So don't leave that piece out. It's good to have the master's degree. It's good to have, the bachelor's degree, but you also need real world experience. And just like I say, I work with people every day who have these advanced degrees and still don't have a job. So it is really important that you get that hands-on experience. And there's several ways that you can do that. You can do that by volunteering at a place. You can do that by doing some type of on-the-job training. But you want to make sure that you make that one of your key components if you're trying to get into HR, because I have seen both spectrum. I've seen some people who have no experience, you know, that are in HR and they're doing well. And then I've seen some people who have all the experience and yet they can't find a job or they can't get in to the HR career field like they want to. So it is really key that you remember that.
And I have been studying some things in HR because, you know, eventually I will be getting those credentials at some point when I can sit down and actually focus on it. Right now, the time is not afforded to do that because I am a grandmother and taking care of a grandbaby also. But, but you know, looking at it, it's not so much as everything being by the book. From the material that I've heard and had, like Joanna said, it does take real world experience. You know, you have to look at in every, you know, situation individually. You can't just always apply like across the board things to, you know, situations that necessarily don't afford it. Like there are rules and then there are exceptions. And I think that it's important to know that. With the union does enforce, you know, our contracts, and a lot of, you know, being a part of the union is making sure people are being treated fairly and equitably, and there isn't any disparate or, you know, prejudicial treatment. And I also understand that it's imperative that, you know, you do your job, because at the end of the day, that's who's paying you. And that's what the HR role is. That's how I see it, as, you know, you being compliant with the company, helping the company to be compliant, helping them to stay in line and making sure that they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's for their organization. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a job. But my job is to represent my members against those odds.
And I think for one thing too, to be a good HR, to be an HR, in my opinion, to be a good HR person, there is a fine line and you have to wear both hats because your supervisors, your managers, they're thinking about the bottom line. They're thinking about dollars. But your people, you can't have a job if you don't have people to work. So you always constantly got to walk that line into catering to their needs, but also putting the company need, you know, also catering to the company's need. And it is a fine line. And I think that I have seen HR managers who are good at one and not good at the other. They're good at taking care of the organization, but they have no people skills.
Right.
So I think we have to have a balance of both. If you're going to be in this career, so you have to love people, but you also got to realize you have to take care of the bottom line.
Exactly. It's like a teacher.
Lynette, what would you have?
Yeah. So all I was going to add to what Karla was saying is, you know, they put a lot of duties and responsibilities also on these HR managers. Because when I first got into HR, I was a business partner, and you're talking about being responsible for training and development, the recruiting aspect. You're, you know, posting jobs sometimes, might have to set up for a meeting. I mean, just run the whole gamut. So when I was working with the unions, we would get like so many grievances in that I was handling. I would prepare maybe 15, 20 minutes before we would go sit down. So I'd be up there calling the manager like, okay, what did you say to the employee? I need to know everything, maybe like within the hour before I'm going into the union. So read through a CBA, like a collective bargaining agreement, and making sure that everything is fine, you know, fine-tuned. I know what I'm talking about. It, unless you had years of experience in there and you had the repeated situation, it's a good chance that the person you're meeting with simply didn't even have time to sit there and prepare fully for a sit-down meeting. And I'm sure you've experienced that.
Oh yeah, many times. But at the same time, that's why they put contract articles that they're saying that people violate. So if they pay attention, I mean, it doesn't take a lot, right, for you to just pay attention to what's going on, because a lot of these things can be prevented. It's mostly a compliance issue, right? So go ahead.
You have to understand that a lot of times in these instances with those collective bargaining agreements, as well as your policies and procedures for your agency or your company, it's a lot of gray area. So though it's written a certain way, there's this gray area that I guess everybody's supposed to use common sense, and we all know common sense ain't common, okay? But you know, there are these gray areas that nobody takes into consideration. And when you go in and you're meeting with the union, because like you said, you have these 15 grievances that you have gotten and you have to prepare for in 10 seconds before you meet with them, you're like, okay. And you said I need you to tell me exactly what you said so that I can argue this point and we can try to resolve this. And so that's where it gets difficult. A lot of times these department heads, supervisors, or managers, I don't know what you call them in the private sector, they just don't know that, yeah, you could say this when you were on their level and you worked in the same position that they worked in. But now that you're a manager, though they have been your friend for 22 years, you're now their supervisor. You can no longer say this. And that a lot of times is what gets us in the trick bag and have us sitting at the collective bargaining table again.
It's simple things like FMLA. I had a young lady who was terminated, been at the job for a while, pregnant, supervisor wouldn't comply with, the laws that they have in the state that she lives in. I'm not going to say what state, but they wouldn't comply with the laws because this state has specific laws around pregnancy and accommodations. And instead of them, accommodating the request that she made, she ended up getting terminated because she asked to go to a different floor. And then they ended up having to pay this woman $10,000 and bring her back to work anyway. When all you had to do was just do what, have a conversation to find out what the issue was and just try to be compliant with it. It wasn't like, we're coming in there flexing. We're pointing out laws that you're violating. These aren't just, CBA contract articles. These are actual laws. So like you said, like I understand that, you may wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things. I get it, but I do too.
You just follow the common rules and laws that you have set forth versus
right. And it's just like the dialogue of communication to find out exactly what a person's point is, a perspective. Pick up the phone, make a phone call. It's very simple. It shouldn't be as hard as it is, but I think that, if you don't have like an amicable relationship with somebody else, then it probably will make it a little bit harder.
So next question is, what tips do you have for interview prepping and what skills do I need to possess? Joanna, as a recruiter, would you like to answer that?
So with interviewing, I always tell my clients, really from both sides, don't give me a cookie cutter resume. Don't tell me what your duties are. I know what an administrative assistant does. Tell me how you added value to the organization. Tell me what you did at the organization that made you shine. What are some key things? Were you over a big project? Did you save the company money? Did you make the company money? Did you assist with some type of big project? Those are kind of things that's going to catch my eye. I don't want to hear that you answer the phone. I know you answer the phone. Every job has someone, they have to answer the phone. So I'm looking for details on how you added value to your organization. Because if I see that, if you added value there, then most likely you can come to my company and also add values. Another thing that I always look for is my job description that I send out there. That's like the perfect person that I want. Do I hardly ever find somebody with all those skills? No, but you better meet some of them. If you're not using the same language that I'm using, I cannot tell you how many times I've had individuals come in my office and, they don't want to use the exact word that I used in that job description. They want to use something else. Hey, I'm looking for this word. That's what I put in my computer. That's what I want. That's what I'm telling my computer to look for, those words. If you're not using them, you're not going to get to my desk.
Exactly.
It'd be in your best interest to use the verbiage that I put in the job description. And if you have skills that closely relate to that, then you need to tell me how you have used those skills at your organization. So those are my key things. In order to highlight yourself, you need to be able to, to clearly tell me how you have given yourself a competitive advantage. What have you done, in your prior job? that's going to make me look at you. And I always tell people, you have about 7 seconds to catch my attention, especially if I'm looking at hard copy resume. 7 seconds, literally. And one job, for example, I'll give you an example. We had an administrative assistant position. We listed it for 2 days. We had 250 applications. There's no way in God's green earth I'm going to look at 250 applications. This is not going to happen. What I'm going to do is skim through it. If I can pick out enough of the information that I have on my job description, I will lay yours to the side, and then I'll go back and I'll look at that more thoroughly. But you have 7 seconds to do that. So if you can't grab my attention in 7 seconds, you'll never get to you'll go in file 13, which is something I never see. It's like, I'll never see it, I'll never check it. You're in La La Land somewhere. So you got 7 seconds to grab me with your attention.
Listen, I refer to it as file 18, and that's AKA the shredder.
You don't shred anything, but I tell you, it goes in that file that no one ever checks but IT. So you don't want to be there. You got 7 seconds to, to really grab my attention. So it has to be something that stands out. I'm looking for keywords. I'm looking for how your experience, your skill set matches the need that I have. In essence, I'm looking for some help. So you have to tell me how you're going to help me with this job. If you can't do that, then most likely you will not get through. Putting that on the flip side, as far as the interviewing side, you better have some good stories, because guess what? I don't know you can do what you can do until you tell me. So if we're sitting in an interview, you have to give me a picture or an ideal of how you're going to help me with something.
I think I'm going to be an actor when you're in the interview, honey.
Right. So I'm going to be asking behavioral questions. Tell me about a time, you had someone criticize your work. What did you do and how did you do it? So I'm going to be asking questions like that. I'm going to be asking questions like, what do you know about my organizations? If you can't tell me at least 3 things about my organization, I am not going to hire you. I don't care if you're qualified. You're not going to get a job if you can't even tell me what we do here.
Again, and I'm sorry to interrupt, Joanna, but those are such great points. Those most positions that you're putting in for, there is an algorithm that is reviewing your resume before it even gets to that desk. And that's how it can get to that HR manager's desk. If you are, or that recruiter's desk, you have to beat that algorithm. That's why when you're doing your resume should, as closely as possible, mimic that job description that they put out there. So you have to pull things from your experience in whatever positions that you've had and word them whereas they match up with that job description, so that that algorithm can pull your resume and that it can make it to that recruiter or HR manager's desk. In regards to, like, on the flip side of the interviewing, whereas Joanna in the private sector, a lot of times you do ask those behavioral questions and things like that. For me, in the public sector, in the positions that I interview for, we have a standard set of questions that we ask, and they don't have anything to do. They're actually behavioral questions, but they have to closely mimic what the position is that they will be doing. So it's not, tell me a time where your work was criticized, how do you handle that? We'll ask a question, something as, you have 2 supervisors and both give you a task that they require to be completed by 3:00 p.m. How are you going to prioritize getting that task completed? So we'll ask questions like that, because in where I work, that is what you run into a lot, where you have multiple supervisors who all require you to do something at one time. So I just wanted to say that, pull it, that, like Joanna said, your resume is only staying on her desk for 7 seconds tops. She had 250 applications for one position that was announced for 2 days. That's why you have to, those job descriptions are put together like that for a reason. Mimic them. I have done it. I have literally almost quoted a job description in my resume in order to get that interview.
I also have 2 other things. You have to make sure that you're tailoring each job. Like, you cannot use one resume for every job. If you're doing that, you're never going to get hired, because every position is looking for something different. So if you have the skills, and I'm going to caution you on this, don't lie. I cannot tell you how many people who put the words that we have in our job descriptions, they pay somebody $600 to do this beautiful resume, and then I bring them in for an interview and they have no idea what's on this resume or how to speak on it. We can pick up a liar a mile away. So don't lie on your resume. You might get through, but the real you is going to come out in the interview. So you want to be truthful. You want to be honest. If you have the skills, Make sure that you highlight that. If you don't put that on your resume. Do not do that. You make yourself look bad, and it's a waste of my time. I have literally cut off interviews for people that I know who were being dishonest. Like, you know what? This job is not for you. Thank you for your time. I have done that several times, and I will continue to do that because it's a lot to hire somebody. Right now, we're averaging like 4 or 5, months to get a butt in the seat. I mean, that's what all the background screenings, that's what all the pre-testing that we have to do. I don't have time to bring somebody in who's not serious about this position or who don't have that stuff together.
I have a question about that because you touched on something I've always been curious about, like people in a position where they're hiring someone, like, because I know some people can do interviews very well, right? They finesse interviews, ask good questions, put on a good presentation. So at what point or about how long does it take for you to find out that someone isn't the right fit for a position and
well,
they make it past the interview process?
If they can pass the interview process, it's usually within their probational period, which for me is about 90 days. People can pretend, but at some point the real you is going to come out. I mean, you just can't keep pretending forever. So it's going to show up, but usually we find out within the first 90 days whether someone is a perfect fit. And we tell them that you have a 90-day period. We're going to be watching you. We're going to be asking questions. We're going to be interacting with you. If we think that you're not a good fit for this position, then we will let you go. I mean, that's in our contract. We put it out there from the beginning that you're going to be evaluated this 90 days, and depending on how you do will determine whether or not you'll stay with our organization.
Yeah, and I know in the federal sector, Diane, it's like a year, right? The probationary period is like a year.
It really depends on which agency you're with. Some agencies' probation is longer than that. It can be anywhere from 3 years. With my agency, you do have a probationary period of 1 year. And in that 1 year time frame, that is, you have, they evaluate you. They give you quarterly logs, quarterly evaluations for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And in that process, you either perform or you don't. During that time, we're also going through your background very thoroughly. And that can take anywhere upwards of past a year to clear. And anywhere in that time frame, you can be terminated within your probationary period if you're not performing to task, or if at some point during your probationary period for my agency, you are involved in some type of disciplinary process. We will remove you during your probationary period for that as well. So that probationary period is a big deal. We talk about that during the interview process for our applicants, letting them know if you're hired, you will be on probation for 1 year. If at any point after we start the onboarding process with you, you realize that there was something you didn't share, please share that information with us. Do a memo to Human Resources so we can include that in your security file. When I have a new group of applicants start the first day of employment, I'm reminding them, hey, you are on probation. If there is something that has come up since you interviewed, since we gave you a final offer of employment that you need to share with us that may come up in your background, please let us know. Do a memo to HR so we can put that in your file so that we're aware, and it won't be that you didn't share that information with us. So.
Okay, ladies, we've talked a lot about, what it takes, what skills you need, interview preparation, resume skills to get into the HR field.
Let me interject before you go to your next question too. One of the things I wanted to kind of piggyback off of Joanna, the quantifiable goals. If you can use those when you're going for an interview, and I'll give a couple examples. If you reduce the turnover rate, you can come in there talking about you reduced it by 30%. I saved the company $50,000 by recommending this kind of implementation. I changed something, I implemented something. If you can speak in definitive answers and give numbers to what you've done in the past, that'll most likely get you past that next candidate that is sitting in Joanna's chair talking about they recruited or they did something, they did some copying, made some orientation binders. You come in there showing how you save the company money. That's going to get you to the next level. And so next thing I wanted to talk about was the behavioral interview questions. If you can answer any kind of behavioral interview question using the STAR method, that's going to get you through that whole list of questions. I went through a horrendous interview before I learned of the STAR answer. And it was a nightmare. There were like 19 pages of questions. The interviewer just kept flipping. And every question had like 4 parts to the response that you had to give. So you have to start off about, they'll say something.
Explain to them what the STAR method is.
Absolutely. So you go into the situation first. You talk about, if they ask you a question about, name a time that something went on and how you're going to do this, what's the result. So you go into situation, talk about the situation, pick one in your head first. Because if you don't pick a specific situation, your answer starts sounding like blah, 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 blah. And you just don't hit the point that you need to hit in front of that interviewer. And they have pages and pages of questions when they're doing behavioral interview. I had a 3-hour interview that was like a nightmare. I'm just stressing it was a nightmare, because you do situation, you go over the task, you go over an accomplishment that you've made, and then you follow up about a specific result. So that's the STAR. For any type of position that they're asking you a ABCD type question, that's how you have to hit it. Because if you don't give them some specifics and you don't think of something that you really truly did on your job, and you start trying to make it up as you're talking, it'll come through in a minute, because you'll get to like the result part and your answer will sound like, yeah, I made everything better. I mean, you won't even know what you're talking about. So that's my 2 cents about your interview. Come in there with some specific goals, some percentages, pull up some numbers. You know they're going to ask certain questions, so practice certain answers to certain questions. Everybody wants to know, if you're going for recruiting, how many people did you have to fill? What was your fill rate? You know, how soon were you turning it over? You post the job, how soon were you filling it? So you know they're going to ask specific questions. So start practicing what on earth you're going to say when they throw that question. And don't get caught like the deer in the headlights, because it will show. You'll be like, I have no idea what you're asking. Practice some of the questions first. So.
And let me just say that what Lynette is saying is definitely true. You definitely need to have some, you need to come to an interview with some situations. However, from a governmental standpoint versus private sector, I will say that that's how the interview process works in private sector versus governmental sector, because Donna's federal, I'm local, and we have similar. There are some questions specific to a certain role. However, I have been in those situations, and that STAR, I want to go over it again. STAR is situation, task, accomplishment, and result. So when you go into that interview, you need to have at least 2 or 3 situations that you are prepared to talk about, and you understand, and you know what your answers are going to be, because it's always going to be, tell me about a time when, or tell me about a situation when. Something about your how do you get along with your supervisor? If your supervisor tells you to, ask you to do something, and you feel blah blah blah, you have to go into that interview prepared. So Joanna, you were commenting?
I was just saying that I have never heard of the STAR
Oh wow.
CAR method. However, we used to teach the CAR method, and it's
CAR?
CAR, CAR. And it's state your challenge, state your action, and then state your result for each of the examples that you give. So I'd be, either way, those are both good. You need to be specific about what you're going to say, and you need to practice. So you need to pull up, you can go on Google, pull a list of, sample interview questions that ask, and practice, because the more comfortable you get with your answers, the better you will be in your interview. And I also advise people not to memorize questions, but have a general idea of what you're going to say. Because if I think that you're memorizing something, I'm going to throw something in to get you off of it. And I have done that to so many people, and they have given me the deer in the headlight, because they had this pre-answer all in their mind. And now that I interrupt them, they don't know where to start. So don't memorize the question, but have an idea. If they ask me this is the example that I would use. but don't memorize it, because I say we as recruiters, I'm trying to get the best person for my organization. So I'm going to be every trick up my sleeve I'm going to throw out to you, because I want to make sure that I'm getting quality. I don't know about y'all, but as a recruiter, I don't like doing this. I want to get you in, get you. I don't want to have to start this process all over again. So I want the right person the first time. So we use different tricks as recruiters to kind of see where people are, if they're just giving us a standard cookie cutter answer, or are they serious, or are they truthful, are they honest? We do all of that. So yes, we are playing a game. But
so let me
tell you something. I haven't interviewed for a job in so long. So all of this is foreign to me. Like, just going through this process is just like dating. I saw y'all little podcast earlier too. But that process is similar to dating. It's something that you'd rather not do.
Right.
It's just, it's a lot. Just listening to everything that you guys are saying, you give an excellent advice. But it's like, sometimes I wonder how much attention do you actually pay to the resume or the application as opposed to the interview. So which one has more weight?
They both do, because the resume is what gets you in the door. That's the first thing. It's just like that's your appearance. Your resume is your first appearance. The first thing that they see is your resume. And then based on your resume, they're going to ask you questions, and that with that job description based on what you said in your resume.
Yeah, and I have to agree. The resume is the most important. That's what's going to highlight you. But your interview is going to close the deal. So just say, even if you get through, if you don't interview well, most likely you would not get hired. At least for me, anyway. You have to be able to communicate to me why you want to be there, what your skill set is, and I have to be able to understand that. So if you can't articulate why you want to be here and what your skill set is, you won't be hired at my organization.
Listen, I was in an interview for we were interviewing a director level at one of my jobs. I'll just put it that way. And let me say the person got hired. Okay, they did get hired. However, one question, you guys tell me your opinion. When they ask you, tell me about yourself. We don't care how many dogs and cats you have. I don't care if you got a boy or a girl. I don't care if you live up the street, down the street. You went to Hawaii last year, this year, you're going back in 2 more years. This is not about your personal, tell me about yourself. I'm 5'6", I'm saying, I wear wigs. I like diamonds. I like to go on vacation. This is not about you. This is about, tell me about your work. This is where you become an Academy Award winning actor. You have to present yourself in the best light. You have to highlight your skills. If that's that, usually it's almost like that's your first question. I've been in a whole bunch of interviews. That's the first question. I'm like, come on, bring it on, because I'm ready, girl. I'm ready. This is the time that you have to tell me about your work self. Who are you? I'm somebody who takes pride in my work. I'm dedicated to. You have to highlight yourself and tell them who you are, or who you are potentially going to be as an employee. This ain't about your personal life. We don't care about how many cats and dogs you get.
And this is the time to pat yourself on the back. I mean, this is the time you want to talk about yourself. So don't be shy. Tell them what you have done, the things that you're proud of, your accomplishment. This is the time to actually talk about yourself. But you're right. I have seen so many people. We do a lot of mock interviews. So many people get tripped up on that. I've had people tell me about their divorces, the girlfriend they're living with. It's like, no, no. But having said that, to be on both sides, you always have to remember they're interviewing you, but you also have a time in the interview where you're interviewing them. So don't miss that opportunity to interview them, because you also want to make sure that you're working for an organization that has your best interests at heart.
This is the right.
And that's something most people don't do. They spend so much time preparing for the interview and not their portion where they actually get to interview them. So at the end, when they ask you if you have any questions, you should have a list. I'll be honest, I come in there with I'll be rolling 30 strong. Now, do I ask 30 questions? No, because some of them are answered throughout the interview, but you better believe I'm answering the key things. I want to know how they handle disciplinaries. I want to know how they handle when you make mistakes. I want to know what the future of the company is looking like. I want to know when I get in there, what are the top 3 projects I will have to do within the next 90 days? I want to know who my supervisor is. I want to know what his management style is. I am trying to make an informed decision about whether or not I want to work there, because I don't teach people how to find jobs. I teach people how to find careers. And that's one of the things. To find a career, you need to make sure you have the information you need to make an informed decision. So that is my take on that. They're interviewing you, but you also have an opportunity to interview them. So don't miss that.
But you need to also highlight, though, in general, most people, when you go to an interview, you're looking for a job. That's how they miss interviewing the company, because you're the one that's desperate for a job. So you're trying to do, if you are if you feel that you are the most qualified candidate, if you think you have those skills, that means you are an asset. You have to present yourself like, I'm doing you a favor by even coming here to this interview, and this is what I can offer you. And so that portion where you get to ask questions, so now what can you do for me? The thing is, you don't necessarily want to talk about benefits, how much I'm going to get paid. You're going to find all of that out, right? So I know from, when I did work in private sector, if somebody's first questions, was, well, what am I going to get paid? And, how much, we're going to get to all of that. You know what I mean? We're also interested in seeing the questions that you ask us. What is important to you? If it's just salary, then it's just kind of like, okay, they just here for the, for the money, for the check or whatever. Not that they have this long-term, because if you have long-term goals and you really want to help our organization succeed, there's certain questions that you're going to ask, but you definitely want to take that opportunity to find out about that organization and to see if that is a good fit for you.
HR is a great field to get into. It has been an enjoyable ride for me. I'm looking forward to going even further in this career. It's something that has allowed me to not only learn operations and what the managers are doing and what their subordinates are doing. I've learned a lot about the law. You almost become a lawyer in HR. You're citing certain articles of this and the law of that. So it's been an enjoyable ride for me. I would recommend, if you do really think that HR is a fit for you, don't give up trying to enter the career path, but be realistic, get your foot in the door, move up, learn all that you can, and just don't give up. It's a great path.
Karla, you have any parting words?
Yes, I do have a great amount of respect for human resources. Like I said, I work on the labor side of it, but I'm also, like I said, I do supervise people, and I have been in a capacity where I've, done learning, training, development, and all that. But I do have a great amount of respect for HR, because I know what the role entails. And just because I'm on the opposite side of it doesn't mean I don't have respect for it. But I would just encourage if you are going into HR, to know what you're doing, know what you're getting into, stay organized, prioritize, manage your work and employees appropriately. And just kind of not just look at things as a one-size-fits-all module, and just try to keep an open mind. As Juwan and everybody has said here, there are some exceptions to the rules, and everything isn't just by the book. And being in HR is something that you have to make sure that you are aware of that, because things may change, people change, situations vary. So I would just, leave with that parting advice. But my heart is with the union. I love you guys, though.
All right, ladies, this has been a wonderful podcast. I really appreciate all you guys' expertise.
Thank y'all for coming on.
Appreciate
No
y'all.
problem. Love you guys. Take care.
Yep. All right, on that note, peace and hair grease.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.